Ladies and gentlemen, the program will begin in 2 minutes. Please take your seats and silence your cell phones. Thank you.
Tarleton State Forward 2030, our future-focused strategic plan, was built to guide where we go next. Now, 5 years into our decade-long journey, we've reached an important milestone. A moment to reflect, a moment to learn, a moment to look ahead. For the past 5 years, 5 strategic goals have served as our North Star, guiding decisions, priorities, and the way we serve our students, our communities, and our state. Student opportunity and success, academic distinction, global, community, and first-generation initiatives, research, innovation, and economic impact, institutional prominence. These goals were created to grow with us, and they have. Over the last 5 years, Tarleton State has moved forward with purpose and momentum, fueled by the dedicated work of our faculty, staff, students, alumni, and supporters who believe in our mission, and turbocharged through the support of the Texas A&M University System and its Board of Regents. In 2021, we laid the foundation, launching Tarleton State Forward 2030 alongside our comprehensive fundraising campaign, Forward Together. That same year, we achieved Carnegie R2 research status, accelerating our trajectory on the road to R1. In 2022, we joined the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, placing Tarleton State among the nation's leading public research institutions. We expanded educational access in 2023 through our dual enrollment program, Tarleton Today, opening doors for high school students across Texas to begin their Tarleton State journey earlier than ever. Then we celebrated transformational academic milestones, including the unveiling of our first name academic college, the Mayfield College of Engineering, soon followed by the Dr. Sam Pack College of Business. In 2024, cranes across Stephenville and Fort Worth became symbols of growth and possibility, giving rise to an interprofessional education building, an events center, and a health professions building, all facilities that have expanded opportunities for learning, collaboration, and community connection. And through strengthened town and gown partnerships, we expanded our impact across the region and beyond. Over 180 distinguished high school and college partnerships, alongside designations as a first-gen Forward institution and gold-level military-friendly school, prove we're committed to helping all students achieve their dreams. Now, over the past year, we're sharing the Tarleton State story and gaining traction like never before. On the national stage, signature moments, including our historic athletics win over Army, have elevated Tarleton State's visibility in powerful new ways. And through all of our work, we've continued expanding access, opportunity, and affordability for all Tarleton State Texans, surpassing 21,000 students in enrollment in our 6th consecutive year of growth. And we're not finished. As we reflect, we also look forward, knowing even greater opportunity lies ahead. We are continually evaluating our progress to ensure Tarleton State Forward 2030 remains aligned with the evolving needs of our community, our region, our state, and our nation. Together, we will analyze the trends shaping higher education and our institution. We will explore new opportunities to strengthen student success, workforce alignment, innovation, and engagement. And we will continue refining the priorities that will guide Tarleton State and chart our next chapter forward. Because the future of Tarleton State isn't something we wait for. It's something we build together. And together we will continue moving Tarleton State forward. Let's all thank Joey McReynolds and our media team for their exceptional ability to tell the Tarleton story. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tarleton State University's Future Summit. I'm Credence Baker, Chair of the Integrated Planning Council, and it's truly a joy to see each of you here in person, as well as those joining us online, as we come together to help shape the second half of Tarleton State's strategic plan. It's hard to believe we've already reached the midpoint of our 10-year plan, and today is a chance for us to pause, to scan the horizon, and to look ahead with clarity and purpose. To start, I'd like to recognize a few special guests we have in attendance this morning, if you'll stand and wave when I call your name. First, the reason we're all here, our students. We're happy to have several of our student leaders joining us today, including our student body president, Ms. Lauren Rogers. We also have the members of our Integrated Planning Council here, as well as our objective leads and goal champions who have been doing the work of the strategic plan, if you'll stand to be recognized. And Ms. Lauren Gillespie, who planned and executed today's event, as well as Dr. Kevin David from our planning partners at Campus Works. Joining us from the Texas A&M University System is Chief Strategy Officer, Ms. Corey Castillo. Chief Information Officer, Dr. Vincent Kellen. And Assistant Vice Chancellor for Faculty Innovation, Dr. Kim Reinierson. We also have representatives from the Tarleton Foundation Board here with us today, including board members Kim Leverton and Christy Kennedy. Please also help me welcome the president of the Tarleton Alumni Association, Mr. Ed Gonzalez, along with board members Bridget Hale, Casey Townsend, Michelle Heaviside, Stacy Crofts, and Carrie Hale. Thank you all. And we're also fortunate to have with us today the president and CEO of the Fort Worth Chamber, Mr. Steve Montgomery. In a moment, you'll hear from the 16th president of Tarleton State University, Dr. James Hurley, who will help set the stage for today's speakers. But first, we have a special guest here to bring greetings on behalf of the city of Fort Worth. Mayor Maddie Parker is serving her third term as mayor of Fort Worth, the nation's 11th largest city. First elected in 2021, she made history as the youngest and first millennial mayor of a major U.S. city, and is widely respected for her bold, forward-looking leadership. As mayor, she focuses on education, economic growth, public safety, and quality of life, all priorities that strongly align with the very conversations we're going to have at this summit. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the mayor of Fort Worth, Mayor Maddie Parker.
Well, good morning. It's nice to see all your smiling faces this early. And thank you to Dr. Hurley and your entire team for inviting me to share a few comments this morning to get you started. Across America, one predominant question has been asked over and over again, regardless of your choice of publication. What is the future of higher education in the United States? Some of them, of course, are salacious headlines, maybe revolved around the way a university handled the situation after October 7th. Maybe it's about higher education funding. Maybe it's about protests on campus. Maybe it's about drag shows. It really just depends on the day. But for Tarleton, what I've noticed is you're focused on what really matters most. And the only way to measure what matters most, the only way to measure whether or not what you're doing at this institution of higher education is to look at the facts and the data. Just recently, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board Almanac reported that 84% of Tarleton State graduates secure employment or enroll in graduate or professional programs within 12 months of graduation, which, by the way, leads the state of Texas, which I think is incredibly important. Because in my opinion, getting to work alongside Tarleton State, both at their Stephenville campus and of course here in Fort Worth, I have noticed several things. Number one is you understand the importance, Dr. Hurley, of the intersection between K through 12, higher education, and workforce. Because otherwise, what are we all here for? It may feel really good to enroll students, but not if they don't actually retain their enrollment and actually end up graduating and then working for one of the businesses that Steve Montgomery is here to represent. So let's understand the U.S. economy for a second. And the reason I want you to focus out and then come back in is because of the critical importance of Dallas-Fort Worth Metro, where we sit today. So if you look across Texas, we are now the 8th largest economy in the entire world. We are larger than countries like Canada and Italy. A $2.77 trillion GDP, leading the nation in Fortune 500 companies, which is quite impressive. But then go a step further and look at Dallas-Fort Worth. Dallas-Fort Worth's economy alone, just our region, soon to be the 3rd largest region in the entire nation, passing Chicago. We have the 21st largest economy in the world, a $744 billion GDP. We are home to some of the largest and most prominent companies in the entire world, leading the way in corporate finance, logistics manufacturing, defense, healthcare, all of course anchored by Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, now the 3rd largest and busiest airport in the entire world. There's a lot happening in DFW. So again, why does that matter to this conversation here today? And in my opinion, the importance of the institution specifically of Tarleton State University. Because again, you understand the importance of the intersection between K through 12, higher education, and workforce. You'll hear today in this summit and hopefully be inspired by what the future really looks like, how disruptive things are happening in our economy as we speak. And despite what some may say, if you look at the facts, yes, AI will be incredibly disruptive and already is. But we're not replacing jobs at a place like Tarleton. You're making them better. You're training your students from, by the way, 222 of the 254 Texas counties have students enrolled at Tarleton State University. You're training all of those students from across the state of Texas to be better than their peers and to be more prepared for the workforce of tomorrow. As the mayor of this amazing city, and as Dr. Hurley and I were joking, it's the 10th largest, the 11th largest. We compete from day to day. Right now, we're usually competing with the city of Austin, our state capital. I'm incredibly proud and frankly grateful for the investments of Tarleton State and of the Texas A&M system in the city of Fort Worth and the importance they have at their anchor campus in Stephenville. And I'll close with just a personal anecdote. For those of you that work at the Tarleton campus in Stephenville, I'm from the big city of Hico, Texas. Dr. Baker and I were just joking that she's from Glen Rose. And I'm telling you, the center of the universe is Glen Rose and Hico. I have a lot of friends and colleagues that have gone on to do great things from these small town communities. And I mention this because I'm so impressed by Tarleton's understanding of where they sit today. The importance to understand the future of the workforce and have talent from all over the world that now calls Tarleton home, whether they're student or faculty. But Tarleton, in my opinion, and I got to see it firsthand, has always been the champion for rural Texas students. That's why that statistic of 222 counties of the 254 is so impactful. And amazingly, despite all the innovation you'll be inspired by today, they've understood that year after year. Because 54% of your students are first generation. And back to that original statistic that I mentioned at the beginning, 84% of your kids are graduating and enrolling in higher education again or going on to the workforce. I believe, Dr. Hurley, that is the highest level of success, and for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Enjoy your morning today. I do hope you leave inspired and ready to take on the day or maybe the year because of what you'll hear today. I'm incredibly proud that at Cook Children's you're going to get to hear from our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jonathan Nedrolo, who will make you all feel a little bit dumber, I promise. You'll have presenters like this all day today that really do make you feel like you're in the right place at the right time. Let today be an inspiration despite all of the craziness in the world. I attempt to do that in my job as mayor because if you haven't noticed, politics has gotten a little wonky lately. But I am incredibly grateful to serve this city at this time. A city on the rise, over 1 million people in population, really is incredibly proud moment for our community. God bless, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
I want to thank the committee for allowing me to speak after Mayor Parker, who's incredible. And I'm off script, so this is when Dr. Baker gets really, really nervous. I think we're over 230 counties. Which ranks us third in the state of Texas for the number of Texas counties represented in our student population. And I'm glad the mayor talked about that because it is important. We truly cover all four corners of the state. We have nearly 50 countries, 49, I think we have over 50 countries, 49 of the 50 states. So when you think about Tarleton State today versus 126 years ago on September 4th, 1899, when this great institution was founded, I would have to think that John Tarleton is smiling upon us today, and a man that left his life's fortune for this place, this vision, and we're incredibly thankful. I heard the 10th largest city. I think someone announced the 11th. Steve's shaking his head. That's nearly one. Hurley math. We're nearly the largest city in the United States. And I'm guessing soon, within a few years, we will be number one. And because of the leadership, this is the place to be. Oliver Luck, you're going to hear from in a moment. When he was working with us, he used to say, this is the place to be. Like, Tarleton State is in the perfect location. It's in the perfect state. But I want to start by saying, happy Purple Thursday. Yeah, for those of you that know, you know. Happy Purple Thursday. And good morning and welcome to Tarleton State University's Future Summit. It is wonderful to see so many friends and partners and colleagues gathered here today as we continue to shape our incredible growth and momentum as we polish and we refine our strategic plan, Tarleton State Forward, our 2030 future-focused vision. Now, think back 6 years ago. Dr. Baker did something incredibly mean this week, which all of you know Dr. Baker. She isn't mean at all. She's Switzerland. She's the greatest person in this room. She brought up a video. She came into my office. She said, you want to see something kind of cool, but also kind of depressing? And I'm like, okay. It's unusual coming from you, but let's see what you have going. She showed me a video of her and me speaking at this summit 6 years ago. She said, look how young we looked. And it was so true. I'm like, wow. Unfortunately, she started working for me. She has more gray hair because of me. And it's incredible to see and to think about the growth. And Kevin David and all the great people that helped us launch this in this city 6 years ago. And I think that many of us probably thought it will take 10 years for us to accomplish. And what you're going to learn today is much of what we set out on in 2020, we've already accomplished. It's pretty remarkable. I remember our guest speakers, Oliver Luck flew in from Denver to be here, probably on a plane that was full. Very few empty seats. I remember our guest speaker flying from Atlanta, and it was during COVID. He said, I was one of 3 individuals on a flight from Atlanta to DFW. So we launched this during very uncertain times. But one of the things that we said collectively, we were not going to allow COVID, the pandemic, to define our future. We as Texans, Tarleton State Texans, we were going to define our future for our students. So to stop and reflect on the university's accomplishments since launching that plan back in 2020, it's simply remarkable. Today serves as another milestone as we focus on shaping the next chapter of Tarleton State University's future. A very special welcome to those of you that are joining us today, both here, but we also have thousands of folks that will be joining us online. If you are a new or longtime supporter of Tarleton State, we are grateful that you are here and part of this very important conversation. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to recognize the team that made today possible. Please join me in thanking Dr. Credence Baker, our Vice President for University Strategy, and the very best Chief of Staff in all of higher education. Let's give Dr. Baker a big hand. She also serves as chair of the Integrated Planning Council, along with her team, and I know that she asked them to stand, but if you would, one more time, stand alongside your fearless leader, Dr. Baker, and allow us to say, job well done. This is incredible. A lot of work. So would the council stand one more time? Thank you all. Lauren, thank you for your great work. Events like this, they don't happen by accident, and we deeply appreciate the planning, coordination, and commitment that brought us here together. We are also honored to be joined by civic and higher education leaders who continue to champion Tarleton State University and the communities we serve. Your partnership matters, and we are thankful for your support. I want to take a moment to thank our mayor, Maddie Parker. Mayor Parker is without doubt America's education mayor. She is passionate about building a robust workforce through a P20 alignment. And when we talk P20, she gets it. And some of the initiatives that we're so thankful to be part of today, the P3 initiative and all the work that the foundation she laid when she was Mayor Betsy Price, Chief of Staff, she laid the groundwork for so many things now that as mayor she gets to take to another level. She is a fierce advocate of all things Tarleton State University, So would you please join me on the stage, Mayor Parker? We have our student body president, Ms. Lauren Rogers, here to give you a gift on behalf of our university.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mayor. Higher education, the workforce, healthcare, athletics, and technology are all evolving at an unprecedented pace. Rather than simply reacting to change, Tarleton State is choosing to lead, think boldly, plan intentionally, and act strategically. To help guide that conversation, we are fortunate to hear from 4 exceptional thought leaders whose perspectives align directly with the priorities emerging from our strategic planning work. Today, you will hear from the following speakers. Oliver Luck, president of Palmetto Trust Company and longtime NCAA executive and athletic director. Lindsay Beagley, senior director, lifelong university engagement at Arizona State University. Dr. Jonathan Nedrilo, chief medical officer at Cook Children's. And Dr. Vincent Kellen, chief information officer for the Texas A&M University System. Each of these speakers will be formally introduced prior to their remarks, and together they will help frame a powerful discussion about the future we are building here at Tarleton State University. This morning's program begins with intercollegiate athletics, an area undergoing rapid and complex change nationwide, and one that holds particular significance for Tarleton State as we continue our Division I journey. If you didn't see, we did something really cool this year. We took down the Army Black Knights on national television. The reason that we show that is all of the great things that Mayor alluded to. We are the fastest growing public university in the state of Texas, according to the coordinating board. We're among the top 3 fastest growing comprehensive public universities in the nation. We're one of the fastest growing in research expenditures. And I can go on and on and on. All those great things that we have been able to accomplish doesn't measure to the amount of national exposure that intercollegiate athletics has brought to this institution. That one game, that one win, brought more visibility to our university. And you've heard me often say, athletics will never, ever be the most important endeavor. In fact, I know Vice President Urias doesn't want to hear this. It's not even probably among the top 10. But what it is the most visible. And so that's why it's so important for us to understand the complex changes that are taking place. It is a privilege to introduce our first speaker and my good friend. Many of you remember Oliver Luck on campus for well over 3 years during our Division II to Division I reclassification period. Oliver served as our lead consultant, working closely with the university, closely with the NCAA, ensuring that our strategic priorities and goals aligned with those of the NCAA. Mr. Luck is a nationally respected leader in the collegiate and professional athletics. His career includes serving as athletic director at the University of Houston and West Virginia University, executive vice president for the NCAA, commissioner of the XFL, and leadership roles across professional sport organizations across the world. However, he may be better known as Andrew Luck's father. Andrew, as many of you know, is an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Mr. Luck brings a rare perspective at the intersection of intercollegiate athletics, governance, student athlete well-being, and institutional strategy. Today, he will share insights on navigating the changing landscape of intercollegiate athletics and how universities like Tarleton State can position themselves for long-term success while staying true to their mission, and that's really, really important. No one knows us better. No one knows this space better. So please join me in giving a warm Tarleton State welcome to our first speaker, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Thank you. Good morning, Texans. Nice to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Mayor, you said a couple of things that I want to riff on just for a moment. You mentioned the importance of data and looking at what Tarleton State University has done over the past couple of years. The same is true of athletics. So you think about not just the success of the football team this past season, 12-2, if I remember correctly, knocking off powerful opponents like West Point, but also the infrastructure that was put in place, the new event center, the football stadium upgrades, those are all critically important. So congratulations to Dr. Hurley and the leadership for that. Mayor, you also said that politics is wonky. Let me tell you, college athletics is wonky. And I'm glad you recognize the importance of college athletics by putting me on first in the great tradition. But James is absolutely correct. The visibility that college football in particular, the visibility that college football brings is remarkable. So I'm here to talk about college athletics, and that really means college football. And typically, most folks think that when you talk about big-time college football, you talk about the top 30, 40, 50 schools. We'll expand that and really include all of Division I, and congrats to the university for taking that very ambitious and aspirational step to get to Division I from Division II. But before I jump into this, I do want to share one thing. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. That was very kind of y'all. Every time I'm introduced, I always think about, my past, obviously, but also I think about my most embarrassing moment as a football player. Many of you may remember the old Houston Oilers. I played for the Oilers back in the 1980s after I graduated from school at West Virginia University. I was a backup quarterback, primarily playing behind a guy named Warren Moon, who ended up in the NFL Hall of Fame. Rightfully so, I was a backup quarterback. But I did get occasionally into a game, and I remember a specific moment. I drop back to pass, a backup quarterback, get into the game. I drop back to pass, get blindsided from behind, jammed into the AstroTurf at the old Astrodome. And this was the headline. Suffered a concussion. They took me over to the Texas Medical Center. This was the headline in the Houston Post, a newspaper went out of business years ago. Houston Post headline, Luck suffers concussion, brain examined, nothing found. And that's when I realized I could make a living in the sports business. So college football, from a 30,000-foot perspective, is remarkably successful. By all accounts, it is the second most popular sport in this sport-obsessed country of ours. Second most popular sport. The NFL is far and away the number one sport. No shame in being number two to the NFL. It's remarkably successful. It's built up tremendous equity. And think about this for a moment. Think about this. We are the only country in the world that does college athletics like we do. If you took the proverbial man on the moon, and brought him down to Earth, and took him to a University of Texas or a Texas A&M football game on a Saturday with 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 people swaying, doing all the Aggie things, all the Longhorn things, and then you brought that man on the moon to the Dallas Cowboys Stadium or the Houston Texans Stadium, he wouldn't know a difference. It's remarkable how popular the sport has become. The number two most popular sport. Nobody else does it like we do. There are great universities, as everybody knows, great universities in Europe and South America and Asia. They don't do sports like this at all. We have been a victim of our own success because we have created a juggernaut, a multi-billion-dollar industry. We've created a juggernaut, and we don't have any guiding principles to figure out how to really integrate it with all this success. I was down at the CFP championship game in Miami. Indiana, Kurt Signetti was my backup quarterback when I was in college at West Virginia, if you can believe that. And he and I are still pretty good friends. And you looked at that event, and it looked just like the Super Bowl. Really remarkable, tremendous television ratings. Coaches earning tens of millions of dollars. Players now being professional. Let's be honest. Let's be candid. Let's call a spade a spade. We are paying players. So it's a remarkable industry. There is no guidance. At one point, we thought the Olympics. And the Olympic movement was a sort of a guiding light for college athletics. Remember when the Olympics were amateur athletes only? Professionals need not apply. Well, if you can think back just a few years to the Dream Team in Barcelona, which was made up of NBA players, Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and all these stars that we know. They went to Barcelona, they won the championship, the basketball championship. I think they outscored teams by 10x or something. And that was the beginning of professionalism in the Olympics. We lost that model because college athletics had been propped up by two pillars, if you will. One was amateurism, which we always defined in the negative. Amateurism is not getting paid. They're amateurs. They do it for the love of the game, right? Back to the Latin root of the word amateur. And the second pillar was academics. And as many of you know, during COVID, the academics of a university, the way education was delivered, the vehicle changed significantly. And certainly, if you look at amateurism today, since the Supreme Court's rulings and the change in the NCAA governance system, amateurism no longer exists. So all of this, college athletics is being held up by one pillar. And this is after decades of what I would call continuity. I went to West Virginia University. I graduated in 1982. My experience as a student athlete, and we were student athletes, I wanted to go to class. I wanted to get a degree. I wanted to go on to law school, which I did. And the university prepared me for that. My experience at WVU was similar to Sam Huff, the great Washington Redskin back in the day, who was in the NFL Hall of Fame, who was a West Virginia graduate in the 1950s. Our experience, collectively, was very similar to my son's experience at Stanford University. He graduated in 2012. We were amateurs. We went to class. It was expected that we went to class. But now we've lost that pillar. We've lost that pillar of amateurism. Most of us in this room would probably say we've been a victim of our own success. There is so much money in the college game. Yes, students should become beneficiaries of that. They have a right, in a sense, to earn some of those dollars. But it's left us in a position where we don't know what's coming next. As a history major in college, I was always taken, if you will, by the following quote. I remember I read this in college years ago, and it stuck with me for a long, long time, and some of you liberal arts folks may recognize this gentleman, Antonio Gramsci. He was an Italian, lived in the 20th century, and was a philosopher and a writer. And this is, to me, the perfect definition of where we are in college athletics. Quote, "The crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old is dying and the new cannot yet be born. In the interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. Morbid symptoms appear. In the interregnum, in the interim, a great variety of morbid conditions appear." And I'm going to share some of these morbid symptoms with you. Many of you would know this. Some of you who maybe don't follow college athletics that closely may not know. There's a college football player who happened to spend a little bit of time down the road at Texas State University. He is on his 7th football team. He started at Auburn, that was number 1. This year he'll be playing for the University of Incarnate Word down in San Antonio, with 5 teams between those two. That's absurd, I think we could all agree. There's a player at University of Montana who is playing his 9th year of college football. That is selfish. That is absolutely selfish. My alma mater, West Virginia University, we hired a new football coach, sort of a new old football coach, Rich Rodriguez. He had been there prior to leaving for greener pastures, and then he came back with his tail between his legs, so to speak. But Rich Rodriguez, in an attempt to turn around the fortunes of the football team, brought in 70 new players this past year. between the portal, and I think everybody's probably familiar with that, and the high school recruiting 75 new players. That's virtually the entire football team. The University of North Texas coach, who used to be at the University of Incarnate Word, he left because he got a better job at Oklahoma State University. He brought 19 of his players with him to Oklahoma State. That's virtually the entire starting offense and defense that just relocated from Denton up to beautiful Stillwater. There are dozens of other examples. And it's gotten even worse because now a football player or a basketball player, men's and or women's player, they now can go to court in their local county, find a sympathetic state judge who probably graduated from the institution, the university or the university's law school, and they can say, because of antitrust laws, you are restricting my ability to earn money. This is arbitrary, this is capricious. You are restricting my ability to earn money, so I want to have a 7th or an 8th or a 9th year. And because that's an economic argument that didn't exist prior to the NCAA allowing schools to pay players, those cases are effectively all being won by the plaintiffs, by the players. So that's a morbid symptom in this interregnum. I'll share just one little academic anecdote because I think it's always telling when a young man or woman, college student, is honest. There was a college student, football player, had played at Ohio State, was a wide receiver, didn't really get much playing time. Ohio State, of course, is a great program loaded with top talent. He left to go to Notre Dame. Somebody asked him, a reporter asked him, so tell me, what's the difference between Ohio State and Notre Dame? And he basically said, well, I never realized I actually had to go to class in person. That is a morbid symptom of the system. You all know about the crazy geography now in place with our college conferences. So the Big Ten decided it would take 2 schools from LA, USC and UCLA, and they then took a couple schools up in the Northwest, Seattle, University of Washington, in Seattle, and then, of course, Oregon. And they're now playing across the country. It's a 4-time zone league. The Big 12 did something very similar. They took the 2 Arizona schools and Colorado and Utah, so now my West Virginia Mountaineers are playing out at Brigham Young University, a valued rival for many, many years. I have 4 kids. 3 of them went to Stanford. Stanford is now in the ACC, along with Cal. So Stanford and Cal, 2 of the best public and private institutions in the country, they are competing against Miami and Syracuse and Boston College. None of that makes any sense. And I would posit to you that this is not serious. Higher ed is a great institution. It's one of the best things that we do in this country to provide opportunity for folks. And the fact that we are fooling ourselves that this is a system that makes sense, I think reflects poorly on higher ed. I have a friend of mine who's an assistant basketball coach at Penn State, and I just want to share this one little anecdote because it brings into sort of clear thinking of how silly some of this has gotten. So Penn State's in State College, Pennsylvania. They got a little airport there in State College. The men's basketball team, because they compete in the Big Ten, the men's basketball team had its West Coast swing. They were scheduled to play a Wednesday game in Seattle and then play a Saturday game in Eugene, Oregon against the Oregon Ducks. So the Penn State basketball coaches said, well, we have a Wednesday game in Seattle. We should leave Monday and adjust to the time zone. It's a long way to go, a couple thousand miles. So they got in their turboprop charter airplane, took off from State College, Pennsylvania. They had to refuel in Bismarck, North Dakota. Finally made it out to Seattle. They recuperated, played the game on Wednesday, and then took a bus down to Eugene, played that game on Saturday. They were gone. Those basketball players who are students were gone the entire week. Does that matter? Should that matter? Were they taking online courses? I suppose so. But that doesn't seem to be something that higher education should be supportive of. Another morbid symptom. So what's the future? Where does this all go? We are in, as many of you may know, we are in the first year, about 9 months into a 10-year legal settlement of the so-called House case. It's an antitrust case. A judge in Oakland, California, a federal judge, oversaw this settlement. And that settlement was between the plaintiffs' lawyers, and this was a class action suit from all these students who said that their economic ability to earn was being infringed by the NCAA's outdated policies. And that was a settlement between them, students, and their lawyers, plaintiffs' lawyers, as well as the Power 5 conferences and the NCAA. So we're in the first year of this 10-year settlement. The settlement document drafted by lawyers, not by sports folks, not by presidents or athletic, by lawyers, plaintiffs' lawyers, that document is effectively the new NCAA rule book. The NCAA has been kicked to the curb. And it's a shame to see that happen, but that's a long, detailed story of how we got to that point. We're in the first year of this 10-year settlement. Most folks who follow athletics, I'm sure Steve, you're your athletic director or vice president, would agree with me. Most folks think we've hit rock bottom. But like good West Virginia coal miners, we're going even deeper. And I can't help but think that some of what we have already seen, even in the first year of this settlement, we have a cap of $20.5 million. There are many schools that are exceeding that cap without any repercussions. Right? There is no system in place right now. This has been said many, many times, and it's partially true, and I guess we could say that because we're out here in West Texas. It is like the Wild West. There is no Judge Roy Bean. And this is not a serious appendage to what is historically a very well-respected institution, that is the institution of higher ed throughout the country. So will it end up with, as some people have predicted, with players being employees of the university, with unionization and collective bargaining? That's the way professional sports work. And guess what? We're paying players, so we may as well rely on what the lawyers call the non-statutory labor exemption, where you can negotiate with a union, you're equal parties, equal strength, and you can violate every antitrust law until the cows come home. And that's fine, because that's public policy and that's the law. Will it end up with a different governing body? But if it does, will that different governing body face the same challenges the NCAA has faced? It's a real predicament. There is no guiding light. We are professional sports right now. And this is not even to mention all the other consequences of what we're doing on the Olympic sports, women's sports, Title IX. It's all to be litigated at some point, but it's a very difficult situation. So my advice to President Hurley and the team at Tarleton, going back 6 years when I began to do some work for them, my advice is fairly simple. Fall back on those tried and true principles from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up through this century that helped build strong, resilient athletic programs. Make sure your students are not only integrated into the university academically, but make sure, and you do a heck of a job doing this, make sure they're integrated into the community. Tarleton football matters to Central Texas. It matters to Stephenville, and you're doing those things. Build the best facilities you can. I talked to Steve briefly this morning, and James and I had dinner last night, and the basketball search is underway to replace Billy Gillespie at some point. I hope I'm not saying too much here, James, but the fact that you've got an unbelievable events center will almost guarantee you to get a top-notch coach, because that's what they want to see, and that's what young men and young women want to see. So my advice in this era of uncertainty, it's almost sort of like AI, right? We all know that AI is going to be powerful, that it's going to change the way we live. We don't know exactly how that's going to work. The same thing is true of athletics. We won't stop liking to watch football or going to games. Nothing better than a Saturday afternoon at a college football game with cheerleaders and the band and music and tailgating and all that fun stuff. That connects alumni to the university and is critical for the success, I believe, of our institutions. But do those things that are tried and true, go back to the future to a certain degree. Now that you're Division I, now that you're knocking off Power 4 programs, FBS programs, you're gaining a lot of visibility, and that's good. Don't despair because of the uncertainty. Everybody's going through it. Take advantage of the NIL opportunities that you may be able to create and sign players. And if you follow those old traditional guidelines, I think the principles will help build a program here in Stephenville, here in Fort Worth and Central Texas, and that's going to be very valuable for your institution. So thank you for having me. Again, I appreciate having athletics go first, football first, as they say in the great state of Texas. Very much appreciate your time and wish you all the best of luck. Thank you, Dr. Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Luck, for taking time to share your thoughtful and forward-looking insights. Your perspective on navigating the ever-evolving landscape of collegiate athletics provides valuable guidance as Tarleton State positions itself for long-term success. Let's give him one more round of applause. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Rogers, and I am currently having the privilege to serve as a student body president at Tarleton State University. It's truly an honor to introduce our next speaker, whose work is challenging universities across the country to think differently about higher education and who it can serve. Lindsay Beagley is a national leader reimagining the role of higher education in an aging society. As Senior Director of Lifelong University Engagement at Arizona State University, she advances innovative, intergenerational learning models that intentionally integrate older adults into the fabric of university life, most notably at Mirabella at ASU, the nation's first certified university-based retirement community. Lindsay's work centers on creating inclusive, multi-generational environments where learners of all ages can thrive. Her thought leadership has been featured in The Financial Times, The Economist, PBS NewsHour, Forbes, New York Times, and Time. Please join me in warmly welcoming Lindsay Beagley.
Wow, it's quite a walk-up song. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the privilege of being with you this morning and to accompany you, support you, and cheer you on as you forge the future of Tarleton State. When Dr. Baker first reached out to me to ask me to speak to you today, my first question was to make sure that I'm the right person for the job. What do you mean by lifelong learning? Because typically when we say lifelong learning, folks are referring to one of two things. Either workforce upskilling, think micro-credentials, certificates, continuing education for professionals, or they are referring to leisure programming for retirees, which is often, separate and apart from the core business of the university. But I am a bit of a provocateur in this space, and I propose to you a third category, and that is integrating post-career learners into the core academic enterprise of the university, not as a side program, but as a growth strategy. I believe that universities are underestimating the largest growth segment in education. And the good news is that we have everything that we need right now to serve it. Oh, I get to use this. Oops, there's my beginning slide. So this is Mirabella at ASU. It is a 20-story high-rise university-based retirement community that is located right on Arizona State University's Tempe campus. And this is a view from University Drive. So this is the main drag of our Tempe campus. So you can see that this is visually signaling that things are changing at ASU. Not only does it disrupt our skyline, our physical landscape of our campus, But we are signaling to people that this is the direction our university is going. We are looking to become a university that is capable of serving learners at every stage of life, not just at this one tiny slice of life between 18 to 25. Inside this building are 350 independent living residents. We issue each one of them a student ID card. They attend classes alongside ASU students. This is Bill. He's a retired journalist. He's in a class called Education for Democracy. They are learning new technology. This is Joe. He's learning Minecraft in our eSports lounge. This is Dreamscape Learn. I hear this is going to become relevant to your campus as well. I love this picture. Look at the juxtaposition of this sleek black Pax with the silver hair. It's beautiful. They attend Sun Devil athletics events, of course. I don't know if you know we had hockey, very serious hockey team. They perform in arts performances. They make music. This is our Artist in Residence program. We have 4 doctoral level music students who live in this building, and in exchange for all of our music programming, they get room and board. They actually make a lot of music. They contribute to labs. They are part of research projects. And they mentor. Of course they mentor. 80% of our residents have at least a master's degree or higher. So this is highly skilled volunteerism on campus. And on average, every resident is spending about 16 hours per week mentoring students and serving in support roles on campus. This is Rich. He started the Future Physicians Forum with 5 other retired doctors. And he supports 80 pre-med students every month for the last 3 years. This is Kathy. She's giving feedback to an interior architect student on her designs. And you can see these are folks who are deeply embedded in every aspect of our university. They are not guests. They are valued learners and contributors in our campus community. What I want to say here is that Mirabella is not just an amenity that is attached to the university. We are challenging old ideas about who the university is for, who it can serve, and what the role of the university is in our longer lifespans. It is also social infrastructure that is overcoming decades of structural age segregation that has led to very clear divisiveness and polarization between generations, and disallowing us to harness the very well-established benefits of intergenerational connection. And as I mentioned, we are challenging this public discourse that universities are for young people, that universities are for just preparing people for the workforce. Yes, they do that, but also they can become hubs for learners to return across their life course to continue to upskill, reskill, reinvent themselves, and repurpose. Now you might be thinking, well, this is very interesting, Lindsay, but we're not here to build a building. And you don't need to, necessarily. I would not say that this is the most appropriate strategy for every campus, but what it is one prototype that allows us to understand what does a university look like when you start to expand and open it up to learners at different stages of life, and to transform it from a university that has a 4-year transaction with learners and instead has a lifelong relationship with learners. What is transferable here is this idea of universal design. And that teaches us that if you can create an experience or a service that reaches the most extreme user, and in this case, a 76-year-old non-credential seeking learner, then you can also create an experience that serves a lot of other people. The most classic example of this is a curb cut in a sidewalk, and this was developed in the mid-20th century in response to war veterans coming home disabled and using wheelchairs. But what urban planners discovered is that same curb cut made the sidewalk accessible to a parent pushing a stroller, to a construction worker pushing a wheelbarrow, to a child on a scooter, and to me this morning as I was dragging my wheeled suitcase across Main Street. And so the lesson here is that these universal design concepts make the experience work for everyone. So how can we use this universal design principle to inspire the next iteration of university design? Well, if you can design spaces and experiences, if you can design messaging and branding that reaches a 75-year-old learner, Well, then a 55-year-old upskiller doesn't feel so out of place here. The mid-career switcher, the curious graduate who is navigating a nonlinear career also know that they can return. They all feel a sense of belonging on your campus. And here is why we need to take this design imperative very seriously. By 2034, not so far in the distant future, there will be more people over the age of 65 than under 18 for the first time in US history. The curve on the left is birth rates. They have been declining for decades globally. We know this. And you may have even experienced this in your own community with closures of K-12 schools and shrinking on-campus freshman classes. So if an institution is tying their future to this first curve, it's tying its future to a segment of society that is shrinking. At the same time, the curve on the right is our life expectancy. Our lives have increased by 30 years over the last century. And this is all thanks to innovations in medicine and public health and public safety. But the problem is that we built infrastructure, education, healthcare, for the first 40 and 50 years of life because the reality is not so long ago, not many of us were entering into 50, 60, 70, and 80. But all of that has changed. So you can look at this, I won't spend too much on the graphs, but I want you to see the difference between 1900, where not many people were getting to 50, 60, 70 years old, to now, in 2020, this is the most age-diverse moment in society, right? And this orange part on the right, this is the area of opportunity. This is the area of entrepreneurship. And the folks that are in this segment are baby boomers, the oldest of which enters 80 years old this year, the youngest of which is 62. So these are folks who have retired and perhaps getting a bit bored, golfing and napping, realizing this isn't the retirement that they want. Or they are thinking about retirement, wondering what's next, wondering what the next chapter is. Or they're actively planning that chapter. They're thinking of encore careers. They're thinking of passion projects. They're thinking of repurposing their skills for something meaningful. They're also living longer and healthier lives than did their parents. Baby boomers are also the most educated retiree cohort we have seen in history. For lots of historical reasons, they got greater access to college education than their parents, and so they have a deep nostalgia for their college experience. They attribute their upward mobility to their education, and they want that for the next generation. They learned to learn on a college campus. They didn't have the internet and ChatGPT and all of these things. So they were trained to learn in a college environment, and many want to return. I love this quote from Andy Carl. He says, "Seniors want active, they want intellectually stimulating, they want intergenerational." I just described a college campus. In other words, the largest cohort of retirees we've ever seen is seeking exactly what universities offer. And yet, most universities are still operating like this. This old 20th century model that assumes that all of your learning happens at the front 25 years of your life. You get your 4-year degree, which is enough to last you a 40-year career, and you're off to your career, never to look back, right? That's the idea. And we have built our entire mental models about the life course around this. Learn, earn, retire, right? But this does not match the economic and demographic reality we are living. This is closer to what we are seeing. We know that once people get into their careers, they're going to have to keep upskilling and reskilling. We know that we're going to have to create flexible on-ramps and off-ramps to education. We know that we're going to have to blur the boundaries between work and learning. And universities are going to have to adapt accordingly, right? I want to show you, this is the 2025 Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum. In the top 10 competencies listed for jobs of the future, lifelong learning and curiosity is number 8. It's number 8. And we can't teach this in a course, right? This is a skill that has to be nurtured. It has to be ubiquitous in our learning environment. And I would argue that one way to do that is to create age-integrated campuses where younger people are learning alongside older, intrinsically motivated learners who have a passion and a deep appreciation for learning. These are folks who are not learning to get the transcript, to get the diploma, to get the job. They are there because they they deeply want to be there. They can model the behaviors of lifelong learning and curiosity. And the good news is this is an incredibly abundant natural resource. This is not the silver tsunami that we've talked about in the past. This is an incredibly deep human capital source that has been growing for decades. At our campus, our students and faculty have been very clear about the significance of older adults in the classroom. And I've interviewed lots of students on this question. But this particular student's quote really captures it succinctly. She says, "Sometimes I think about graduating and I worry that I will realize that I don't like what I'm doing. But I learn about their careers and I see that I can integrate my skills and my hobbies. I can even go back to school. It kind of motivates me to know that I'm not stuck in one place." This quote, I think, profoundly captures something really important, which is age-integrated classrooms change how younger people are thinking about their future. They realize they don't have to figure it out right away. They don't have to know exactly how their career is going to unfold. In fact, they can expect that it will be circuitous. They can expect that they will have to adapt, and they can expect that they will have to continue to learn. Today's graduates are going to be leading organizations and communities that have more older people than younger people, and they have to understand those issues. They will become the policy makers of the future, the entrepreneurs, the business leaders, and if they don't understand issues related to the second half of life, they are already at a disadvantage. So it is our responsibility to prepare them for a 5-generation workforce and for the reality that they're going to be facing. Here's my most important point. You do not need to construct a building to begin. The infrastructure already exists. The demand already exists. The question is, do we have the institutional imagination to act? The universities that will thrive in the next era will not simply be those that recruit the most freshmen. They will be those that sustain meaningful relationships with learners across their lifespan. Thank you.
Ms. Beagley, thank you for those powerful and transforming messages that you shared. You've reminded us that education is not confined to one season of life. It is a continuous process and a continuous journey. Universities like Tarleton State play a vital role in serving across generations. We'd like to thank you again. For those of you who I have not met yet, I am Dr. Elizabeth Palmarosi, Vice President for the Division of Health Sciences and Executive Dean of the proposed College of Osteopathic Medicine. It is an exciting time at Tarleton State as we continue building programs that directly impact the health and well-being of our communities, particularly in rural Texas. Our next speaker is here to talk about just that. Dr. Jonathan Nedrolo currently serves as the Chief Medical Officer at Cook Children's Healthcare System, where he provides strategic clinical leadership for one of Texas' most respected pediatric health systems. He has lectured extensively across the state on topics including cardiopulmonary development, management of bilirubin in newborns, delivery room emergencies, neonatal pain management, and therapeutic hypothermia for birth asphyxia, to share how Tarleton State can strengthen the health of our rural communities and to help shape the future of Texas healthcare. Please help me welcome Dr. Jonathan Nedrolo.
Thank you all for inviting me today. It's been lovely. I've enjoyed the talk so far. So I work at Cook Children's healthcare system, and it's kind of hit me here with the first couple of talks. I've got a powers of 10 moment here. So 10th largest city, well, 10, 11. Cook is the 10th biggest freestanding children's healthcare system in the country. And since I'm a neonatologist, that's a newborn intensive care doctor, 1 out of every 10 babies that are born in the United States are born in Texas. So just kind of a 10-10-10 notion here. I thought a lot about this talk, and I tried to keep it in 12 minutes, but we're not doing that today, which is great. But I still don't want this to be death by PowerPoint. Physicians are notorious for this, but I did put together a PowerPoint. And the theme that I'd like to propel today and really lean on my university colleagues and really, all experts in the society current state, their credentials in some way, shape, or form flow from higher education, right? As chief medical officer, I think about the system of care that we use to help children is almost like a patient. And so it's, every system is perfectly built to get the results it gets. This is a quality improvement thing. My main charge is to make sure children are safe and that the quality of the care is wonderful. Cook strives to be the most trusted healthcare system for protection and delivery of children's health. But, it kind of, at the macro level, it gets a little bit amorphous and it can be kind of boring. So I thought if we're going to solve for trust today, I would try to pepper in a little bit of my career and look at how trust is built at the individual level. And in some ways, there's a nice connection there. The higher education is really focused on learners. It's focused on the student, almost the same as medicine is focused on the patient. And so there's a patient-student crosswalk that happens there. So I'll start with my first slide here. I play on this phrase, "Trust me, I'm a doctor." I looked it up. The etymology here is elusive. There isn't really anything, this idiom. But it's got a sardonic quality to it, right? So it can be genuine, but it can also be disingenuous, right? Because there's a lot of distrust that always has existed around health. Health is something that ultimately concerns us, our humanity. I was a humanities major. I was one of the few who entered medical school without a science degree. And so I've been trying to solve for this concept of trust and how I talk to patients, and most doctors do since day one. But there's not a lot of formal training that goes around this concept. So trust in medicine is ever-changing. The relationship with science and education is part of that. But I'm a Gen Xer. I was probably 12 when this story came out. This is Dr. Jarvik. And this captured my imagination. So Jarvik was the creator of the artificial heart as a freestanding thing, not just as a augmentation of existing heart function. And there was, in the 80s, this was about 84, 86, there was a successful artificial heart transplant that was done in the United States. Dr. Jarvik did not do that transplant. He was a doctor. He never did a residency. And it was a cardiothoracic surgeon that implanted his device. He's young. He's in his 40s. He looks like a TV doctor. You want to trust this guy. He's holding the tool, right? So we're a tool-making society. Our humanity is founded on tool-making. And I just adored this story. And as a kid, it really captured my imagination. But even more important, the patient captured my imagination. Some of you will remember this name. Barney Clark was the patient's name who received this Jarvik heart. He lived about 115 days after he received that heart. But I remember him being interviewed on the news. This is local news. Affiliates picked it up. I'm a kid. And he felt like he was contributing to discovery, is what I remember. and the machine that the artificial heart was hooked up to, the batteries, et cetera, it's kind of like the old mainframe computers. It took up half the hospital room. But I was just as intrigued with the patient and their story as I was with the tool making that this doctor did. So here's a little bit of, I'm going to be a little gratuitous. Does anybody recognize this individual? So this is in the late 90s. I was a third-year resident at the time. This is my younger daughter. I had to open up every conversation I had with the family in the ER and assure them that I was old enough to take care of their child. And that was my first inclination that trust is so important. I was at a big-name university, four-letter named university, and there was credential that was imparted upon me simply because of my training program, simply because I went to medical school, et cetera, et cetera. But that was only part of the story. It was really important that families had a sense of trust in me that was outside of my credentialing. And that had to do with how you speak with folks. You have to assume much about people's fears and not over-assume. One thing that I've done in the ICU I've practiced medicine for 21 years at Cook Children's in the ICU. We have about 1,400 babies that come through our NICU every year. Some of them stay for over a year in the hospital. I meet these families, a whole team of people meets these families during one of the worst moments of their life. Their baby, their newborn is sick. And they have to meet an entire group of strangers. And I acknowledge that. I say, I'm sorry you're having to put so much trust in strangers, but we'll get to know you, you'll get to know us, and we're gonna work through this. That's an amazing way to set the tone, I found over the years, and folks just are really need that. So there's a real humanity to practicing medicine, and I'll talk about how that relates to higher education. So anyway, I was always, Doogie Howser was my nickname, if anybody knows that reference. Millennials won't get it, but it's okay. So a couple of historical things, which I'm excited to talk to professors and college folks and higher education. I wanted to be a professor, but I wanted to be a philosophy professor, I was telling Dr. Miller. And I looked at the number of jobs versus the number of PhDs that are minted. It's 50 PhDs for every one job in the early 90s, so I changed to medicine. But it's interesting, for a long time, medicine was really paternalism. Even to the tune of folks throughout their whole life, whatever access they had to medical care, the physician did not include the patient in the conversation. They weren't included. And it's only relatively recently that has changed. It's 20th century that's changed. We didn't want grandma to know she was dying of cancer. It might affect her. It might hurt her feelings. Can you imagine, right? You're totally cut out of the conversation. And so that's thousands of years of probably being cut out of the conversation. Communication technologies have changed the relationship between clinical care and the providers. The first telemedicine moment was a telegraph in Australia. A surgeon telegraphed wound care instructions to the hinterlands of Australia somewhere, and that's the first knowable or first instance of telemedicine. But really, it was post-World War II. There was a bioethics revolution. Informed consent became a thing. And you just take it for granted that you're included in the conversation. And patient autonomy was prioritized. And this came out of the Nuremberg trials, and this was really important. And biomedical consent suffered, and it wasn't perfect. And think of the syphilis and Tuskegee and all of the examples of non-consent for research or even for routine care. But now there's a really interesting shift that's happening that's, I think, going to be more impactful even than the information age shift. And so I grew up in the information age. you've got internet, social media, Dr. Google, right? Everyone's heard that term. It's not the bane of doctors' existence. People come in more informed, and it's good. It's a bit of a shortcut at times. It can also be a long cut at times to try to reverse a lot of the disinformation out there. But the next generation here, I think we're going to see a payoff on the electronic health record. It's going to have big data quality. It's not just a representation of an old analog world, a paper chart, but actually we're going to be able to mine it for predictive analytics to help prevent illness in new ways and not just treat illness once it's happened. But trigger warning for the millennials, I will talk a little bit about AI at the end, which I think is super important. These large language models or any just foundational model, once it's able to ingest some of the connection between disease mechanism and actual symptom presentation, it's going to blow up. The world is going to change a lot from a healthcare delivery perspective. So the next slide is very interesting. This throws back to what would it be like to spend your whole life not knowing about any illness or wellness, and you've gone to the doctor, maybe you live in this continuum of information gets converted to knowledge, which I on purpose drew a longer line, gets converted to wisdom. I talk to the medical students about this all the time. When you have easy access to information, I think a lot of people conflate oodles of information for knowledge, and then a lot of people conflate knowledge for wisdom. But it's just getting so much easier to get to the knowledge quotient, especially with generative AI. And I would argue physicians or lawyers or anyone who has a long run-up in higher education and in education in general to become an expert, they're a knowledge worker. And so doctors are really mediators, modern-day doctors are mediators and interpreters of information to get to a choice for families and for patients. They align recommendations with patients' values. Dr. Google is just another voice in the room. There's a democratization of knowledge, and certainly there is of information. And then social media has really created yet another voice in the room. There's a crowdsourcing that goes on with decision-making now. And I'll show you an example of that. This is my niece, August. She was born this summer in August. My brother and his wife had a clever naming, I think. We call her Augie. She was born 8 weeks early, so a 9-month gestation is 40 weeks. And my wife is also a neonatologist, so between the two of us, we have 40 collective years of experience taking care of the sickest babies on the planet. And my lovely brother and his wife were in the NICU for about a month in Los Angeles. And it was fascinating. I was a big part of advice giving, and I'm in the family, I have this expertise. But they also checked my work on the internet. And my wife, and so 4 years wasn't quite enough. But their place of choice, which I think gave them a different kind of comfort. It wasn't about checking my expertise per se. They like to go to parent websites and listen to and interact with people who were going through a NICU experience, either contemporaneously or whenever. And I think there was a trust that they built over the care that they were receiving by having access to that. It could also create anxiety, it could do other things. But it's just another voice in the room, this crowdsourcing. And so what happens when the technology can directly compete with the human knowledge worker? And I think that's where we're at right now. This is the cusp. So it's one thing to have access to endless information, database-driven, but it still took the synthesis of the expert, the lawyer, the doctor, to create a meaningful set of choices for people to react to and have a value-based decision process. And so if we know how it works, the trust can become implicit sooner. And so when we know how things work mechanistically, we have to fact check information online, et cetera, but generative AI is fascinating. No one can really speak to how it actually works. It's simulating human thought, and we really don't know how we think either. When master clinicians really are really good at diagnostic work, and you ask them how'd they get there, they say things like experience or intuition. No one can really understand how we, even humans, think when it comes to some of these diagnostic skills. And so, we trust humans because there's a credentialing, and I had a 10-year apprenticeship after college and medical school to do what I do. But how do we trust AI, right? We don't really know how it works, but it's pretty remarkable in its diagnostic skills. And so there already is a history of tools that we trust in medicine, but we don't know how they work. Tylenol is an example. This has nothing to do with autism, but the mechanism of pain control, we don't really know how that works. General anesthesia, all the anesthetics, propofol, the inhaled gases, this machine that just about everyone, at least currently, at some point in their life already or some point in the future, will be exposed to, an anesthesia machine. We do not know how it creates the unconsciousness that it creates to allow surgery, yet we trust it because there's this rich history of safety associated with its use. We don't have that safety with generative AI in medicine. But there's a couple of studies I'll show, and I'll finish up. Is AI better than a doctor? So this was a meta-analysis over a 4-year period. AI's really only been around for 4 years, and the humans blew the AI out of the water. And that's great. So, but it was old AI, and so much has changed. Just, every 6 months, AI and these large language models have changed. So there was a really clever study that was done last year. This came out in the New York Times about a year ago, a little over. The New York Times picked it up. It was published in JAMA. And it was an AI agent. It was a bot that was created to do diagnostic medical work. So it had some programming. And it went to school or it didn't go to school on the problem set. There was 150 case histories that have been historically used to train medical students and humans as they came up that expertise ladder. And it was never published because they didn't want the medical students to cheat and look it up and figure it out. So it was kind of neat. It wasn't on the internet, so we knew AI hadn't learned on this. And so the hypothesis of the researchers, they had 50 doctors, different levels, residents and senior doctors. The hypothesis was that a human plus AI would do better than AI alone, or would do better than a human alone. But actually what happened was the Chat GPT, that at this time it was 4, did better than both of those other groups. And in fact, the group that did surprisingly worse was the human plus the AI. Because the human didn't like being told, the doctor, didn't like being told that they might be wrong. There was a lot of confirmation or selection bias that went on about, I know I'm right, and even this machine telling me that you didn't think about this, I still stuck with my answer as a human. So there's a lot of prompt engineering, and that's the other issue that went on. The doctors treated it by and large like a search engine, not like AI should be treated. As almost like a coworker or someone that you consult, another consultant. So fascinating, worth reading, really a neat study and a kind of a preview. And doctors will use it better, and I think will potentially beat. But maybe that's not the point. We don't need to, right? Gary Kasparov, remember when he got beat by the IBM computer? It felt like a letdown when a computer beat a human at chess, especially a master at chess. but I think it's a tool. So what's next? I think we're moving towards AI being another explicit third party in the medical conversation, where it's not just an efficiency, it ends up being a third party that families and patients will use. It'll be a third party that doctors consult and medical professionals consult. Physician or professor as mediator between algorithms and patient-student, that's already going on, but that's gonna grow, that's gonna be real. And I think AI will be thought of as a coworker or a co-researcher. It's amazing how well they're able to, the models are able to design clinical trials and help augment clinical trial creation. But value-based decision-making, and this is a utopian bias that I have. Obviously, there's a dystopian part to this. But I think the value-based decision-making will always need to be there. Humans will want to make these important decisions with other humans. We tell stories to each other. It's very important. It's part of what we do. But I think AI might allow for more time for narrative creation. The amount of effort that my practice of medicine throughout the day solves for organizing and coming together with the right amount of information to do the work that needs to be done to keep that child safe, it's all consuming. And it's very hard for me to have a deep narrative interaction with a patient or a family. And I think hopefully the cognitive burdens of that work will be lessened by these large language models or foundational models as the technology progresses. I hope it doesn't get in the way of the relationship that humans have with each other when it comes to their health. And empathy, right? Can we learn empathy even from these algorithms? There's been studies that have shown you can program this into the response by the AI, and there's already work that goes on, automated work in the charts when families have routine questions in their portal, and the bot answers it in a way that's more empathetic than the doctor. It's been studied, and patients prefer the bot sometimes. It's remarkable. So can this tool produce more humanity is how I would frame this for the higher education strategic planning that you guys have done today, or are going to do today. So last, I just got this picture this week, and this is one of my former patients. She's in 5th grade now, so this was, 10, 12 years ago, off to the right. Her name's Avery. That's her as a tiny premature baby. When her mom reaches out, we don't talk about the complexity of the expert work or the medicine that happened. We talk about what humans talk about. How are your kids? How are things going? I'm excited to show you how Avery's thriving. And it's a ongoing dialogue. And I don't believe that technology alone will replace that need for humans. And at the higher educational level, whether it's a rural identity that you're solving for, there's an opportunity to create various narrative and dialogues that swirl around identity that social networks and social media solves for. Like, people have an identity as a group in a new way in our society because of these technologies. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Nedrolo, for your insight on shaping the future of Texas healthcare. Your leadership and passion for strengthening rural and communities and advancing care across our state are both inspiring and deeply aligned to Tarleton State University's mission. My name is Dr. Zach Gorman. I'm the Associate Vice President for Innovation and Chief Information Officer at Tarleton State. I have the privilege of introducing our final speaker of the day, Dr. Vincent Kellen. Dr. Kellen serves as the Chief Information Officer for the Texas A&M University system, where he oversees system-wide IT strategy, infrastructure, enterprise systems, and data operations across all 12 universities, a health science center, and multiple state agencies. His work focuses on advancing digital tools that strengthen research, enhance student success, and improve operational efficiency. He is a CIO Hall of Fame inductee and national recognized leader in digital innovation. Today, he will challenge us in reimagining what is possible with AI in higher education and explore how it can transform learning, work, and innovation at Tarleton State. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Vincent Killen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to start out with asking a question. There's this wonderful game that I seem to play about twice or three times a day. It's called Where Did I Put That? How many of you play that game? And here's how I figure out how to win it. I go, okay, if I were Vince, where would I put that? Right, so, now, that's a lead into, I love this purple binder, so thank you, Tarleton State. This is wonderful, and I love the purple pen. And the reason is, it will be harder for me to lose it. I'll be able to see it easily. A little bit about me quickly. I'm a product of lifelong learning, so I very much appreciated your conversation. I would not be here had it not been for lifelong learning afforded by technology. Could not have done it. I was a first-gen student. My parents didn't know anything about college, so we had to figure it out ourselves. Coming from horticulture, I actually was going to go to ASU, but then I met computers, and while I was in Phoenix, I said goodbye ASU, and I went down to the computers. A little bit as I enter into this, in the spectrum of belief on AI, there seems to be a range in the people I talk to in the world at large between this will bust and go away, to this will be taking over the world in either two ways, a very bad way or a very good way, but I put them on the same spectrum. I'm about 2/3 of the way into that take over the world, not quite there, but I'm certainly not in the bust realm, so you get a sense of where I'm coming from. So I would say I'm an optimistic realist on it. And that leads to a couple things I want to say about AI that's kind of interesting in terms of what's been happening lately. And there was this wonderful show in 2009, right after or during the financial collapse, when all of us were sitting in horror watching the economic apocalypse happen. And the History Channel, in its kindness, decided to treat us with a show called Life After People. Imagine the globe and nobody is there. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, it does, right? And one of the first things that happens is there's this arms race between rats and snakes. So the rat population grows like crazy, and then the snake population goes like crazy until somewhere they reach an equilibrium. Well, not too long ago, I was reading about the courts in Brazil that had decided to use AI to help process the court cases. At the very same time, the lawyers were using AI to create more court cases, so nothing got better. And I immediately thought of that show, Life After People. This is not a moral statement on the legal profession. It was just a side comment. Now, to also start this, when I was an adult learner getting my PhD, I was doing the normal literature review, kind of the old-fashioned way, although very much aided by internet. So I decided in the last couple of years here to pretend I'm a new grad student studying biochemistry. And I have an interest in biochemistry because of my background in biological neurons and neural networks. And so I decided to go get a book that's classically taught in the medical degree programs on biochemistry. I did learn a lesson. I have to learn physics better to learn biochemistry better, so I had to go read up on physics a little bit. And so I started to read all about metabolism, researching myself as a subject of metabolism, looking at my genetics and how the genetics affects metabolism. Could I influence my diet and my exercise routine and make a difference? And yes, you can. But along the way, it started to get me think about the metaphors from biology and AI. And so a little while ago, me and a colleague decided to write a paper called "The Kidney as a Biological Metaphor to Cybersecurity for Personal Enterprise AI Systems." So we started to write this paper, and there's this beautiful paper here that's probably 85% done. It's got charts and graphs, sample code. We didn't write a sentence. Not one sentence. we're going to publish this, say we didn't write a sentence, and my colleague said, Vince, this is happening all the time right now, so we're not first here. And that is true. But between this and using the AI to help me learning metabolism as a graduate student, oh my goodness gracious, this is a fantastic tool. If you're a capable mind with the motivation, you have a knowledge of the fundamentals to really enhance your learning. So I think I'm going to set the stage there so you get a sense of where I'm coming from. Now, this is a bit of a, don't worry about all the words here, but we're going to go into a romp on large numbers, and you're going to see a lot of large numbers here, and I'm going to give you a technical term for them. It's BFN, it's called big number. Wake up. Okay? So there's a bunch of BFNs here. All right? Now, let's imagine a room of 100 people. That's about this room. So imagine a room of 100 people. Now, I used to be a photographer way back when as a journalist. And imagine taking a picture of every possible combination possible in this room. All 200, 199, you and you, you and you, all possible, not ordered, but all possible combinations. Turns out that number is 2 to the 100. And it's written out there in very long form. So that's a big number. That's a BFN. Now imagine you're a photographer, you want to take a picture of all those combinations at the rate of 1 per second, which is impossibly fast. That's like many, many thousands and thousands universes of time that you would need to do that. So the moral of this story is we've gotten to an impossibly large combinations from a frighteningly small alphabet of 100. Information has ridiculous levels of complexity, more than I think everybody realizes, including the sum total of all the investors who are investing it into AI. So there's other numbers here that are interesting. If I want to figure out how many molecules in the universe, that's about 10 to the 80, roughly. So if I want to take pictures of 266 people, that's about the number of molecules in the universe. By the way, molecules or atoms doesn't matter, because there's 3, 4, 5 molecules per atom in the universe on average. The complexity of the game of Go is very complex. Chess is complex, too. In the large language models we use today, there's a thing kind of roughly equivalent to a neuron, not quite, but there's about 10 to the 11 of those in a neural network, 1 trillion what we call parameters. In our human brain, we have about the same number of neurons. Now we have a larger number of connections between neurons, 10 to the 14. And then I started to think, okay, so this information is incredibly complex. The brain appears to be incredibly complex because it's trying to capture the essence of some of that complexity in information writ large. So how much information could you actually pack into the brain? Well, theoretically, as a network problem, that's actually 2 to the 10 to the 11th, which is a ridiculously, utterly high number. So we're not quite sure how much information you can pack in the human brain. Obviously, it's a ton less than that, but me conversing with a researcher at Northwestern who kind of goes into this, we're going back and forth. We can lop off all sorts of numbers off it saying, well, it's not exactly this. You got neurons who don't do things, and that's still many orders of magnitude. Long way of saying information is ridiculously complex. The brain is ridiculously complex because it's trying to process the information. And the LLMs are getting to be complex, but they're still nowhere near the match for both information, and I still think the human brain. So now I'm going to help explain to you how AI works, right? And I'm going to give you some metaphors to help you think about this as you work with the AI yourself, right? And so one way I like to think about it is, I am Spock, or, I'm writing prompts, so I am Spock, and I'm trying to do a mind meld with the LLM, and I'm probing the LLM's brain, and I'm having it retrieve what I want, right? And that's your notion of, you got this person on the side, and you're having a conversation. I just like the science, the science metaphor here, science fiction metaphor. And to an extent, that's largely true. When you are entering a prompt, you are using that prompt, and that prompt is being used to probe into the LLM and find relevant words that seem to match closely to what you're doing and bring it back. And when you do this iteratively, you're probing the mind different ways, just like Spock does here with the doctor. Another good metaphor to think about, and I like this one even better, is when you are working with the AI and prompting yourself, or if artificial intelligence developers who do the same thing but in much more elaborate ways, we are casting a net, we are throwing that net into the ocean called the LLM, and we are retrieving from that fish or word fragments or sentence fragments, or I call them knowledge fragments, back to us. And so now what you're doing with your net and your prompting is you're changing the shape of the net, because when you use different words, it changes. And or you might be adding very specific words as bait designed to retrieve very specific things from that neural network. And so there's this process of continually going and casting your net and bringing it back. This is coming from one of the leaders at Google who left recently, works at, I think, Stanford, Edward Chang, and he's using this metaphor to describe where we're going next with AI. Now, the reason I'm bringing this metaphor here as you work with AI and think about you casting your net through your words and getting more elaborate and intentional about that and retrieving back, the reason we have to do that is AI is still very limited. Despite its prowess, which I think is fantastic, it's extremely limited. It cannot interpret a single prompt sufficiently because there is so much context, things in your brain, things around you, that it does not have. Question is, should it have it? That's another question. We'll get to that in a bit. So then the process of improving with AI is thinking about recasting the net. So if you're a user and you're getting elaborate prompts and you're constantly doing it, you're getting pretty good, you're like, okay, I'm tired of doing all these prompts. Okay? Well, that's where the AI developer comes in and says, okay, we can automate a lot of that for you and start to build more robust solutions to the problem by recasting the net. And I'm going to end here, and I'll be very brief here, not very brief, but I'll end here, that from a higher education standpoint, what is AI good for? And I've been thinking about this for a very long time and applying it, actually, for quite a while now. Everywhere. Okay, so it can be applied absolutely everywhere. We already talked about my example. If I'm a graduate student doing literature review and trying to learn, oh my goodness gracious, this is fantastic, provided I have the fundamental skill and the basic knowledge. So in teaching and learning, this is going to be helpful as well. Many instructors across the globe are busy working on instructional bots of all sorts. As I said, information is extraordinarily complex, so you can think about the opportunity space in education or any discipline as a vast surface area, kind of like a big piece of saran wrap that's very wrinkled, meaning it's got lots of hills and valleys. You might be up on one hill, you can't quite see what the opportunity is over there. Another metaphor I like to use is the property that I have that I'm leaving. I have a grapefruit tree and an olive tree. And when I go out to the grapefruit tree, I can go with a basket in about 10 minutes, pick a bunch of grapefruits, walk back another 10 minutes, I can juice it, and I can be drinking grapefruit juice in no time flat. When I pick olives, it's a different matter. You're out there for what seems like 6 hours, you barely get a half a basket full, right? Then you gotta go wash them, then you gotta clean them up a little bit, and you gotta put them in brine, you gotta let it sit for a week, rebrine, and then repeat that another 3 months, and then you're finally enjoying olives. Extracting value from AI is a little bit more like picking olives and picking grapefruits, because the surface area of knowledge that we have in front of us is very wrinkly and very enormous. In addition, higher education as a business, I've been a strategy consultant in other industries, is enormously complex. We do not appreciate the complexity of what we do. We get a large share of the family wallet. We get it's one of the only products where the family or the person comes in and says, I want a transformation. So the expectations are incredibly high. The type of knowledge we try to teach and share is as complicated as could be. Outside of the prison system, I couldn't find a business that had to care and feed in so many ways for people than higher education does. So one, appreciate that. So teaching, learning, tons of opportunities that can happen there. Research, the researchers have certainly been all over this in many different ways, and it can help in a couple of ways. Certainly as a tool to find patterns in data, either the newer generative AI or even the old school AI, but also in automating the pipeline of how research is done. Generative AI is already doing wonders there and is going to continue to help. A lot of researchers finally discover that they're actually programmers. And so I have a family member who's like, you know, I studied veterinary science. I didn't think I'd have to be a programmer. And now they don't have to be, because the AI can help with a lot of that automation. And of course, in administration, we have all sorts of business processes and tasks that we do. But if I want to leave you with a metaphor here, another one, in all three of these domains, whether it's a student, a faculty member, or an administrator, we are all learners processing information, every one of us. Which brings me back to the learning paradigm. The learning sciences have a lot to contribute in how we're going to master and use the AI. This then leads to my top concerns, where my head's been at recently, that might help inform what you're doing next. The first one that comes out is, are people stunting their intellectual growth? That's a really good question, because using AI to try to learn is sort of like going to the gym with an exoskeleton and hydraulics. Not doing much for the muscle. A lot of us like personal trainers. Why? They push us, right? And they can push us physically. Well, students of any age are extreme athletes, intellectual athletes. We are trying to push their mind, push their effort in order for them to learn new things. And I like to say, just because the technology gets smarter doesn't mean we can get dumber. We've got to stay smart with the technology, which then leads to a really interesting question. If you're an educator, what do we actually teach people now, since so much can be gained on their own once they get their propeller or their gyroscope going? I think it's fundamental knowledge, peer interaction, interaction with experts, human motivation. I think it's going to be very hard for anybody in the economy of the future to use this AI unless they've got pretty deep fundamental knowledge in a couple of areas. And so I think that's good hope. One, liberal arts programs. I was a studio art major, so I'm always going to give a shout out to the liberal arts programs. It's coming back, perhaps as a concern. Another issue we've noted is, in some cases, we can over-facilitate tutoring and give students very useful and improving results with tutoring at the expense of peer interactions. Do you want that? It's kind of like the ghettoization of the academy of learning through AI. No, you don't necessarily want that, so you got to make sure that the AI can engage the humans in peer interactions. And in education, those who know student success, peer interactions are vital for very good student success at any age. Of course, we want to understand, is it providing reasonable and ethical help? And lots of work and lots of concern. I'm far less concerned about that because there are so many other people concerned about it. So I'm not worried. The distribution of people who are concerned and unconcerned seems to be very well in our favor of higher education to be very concerned. So I feel pretty good there. Privacy, security, and safety are a concern, no question. I remember years ago I was trying to have a teaching moment to one of my young nephews about, we're chatting on instant messaging. And he's chatting with me, Uncle Vince, Uncle Vince. I said, how do you know it's Uncle Vince? Well, because it says so here. I said, well, I could be somebody else on here. And he was not having it. He's like, no, that's you. Well, he had to learn, yes, you can spoof your identity. And with AI now, it's extremely easy. And the spoofing of identity and trust, now your conversation on trust is very apropos. What does that cause people to do with their trust? A concern in higher education is, can we afford it? And can we sustain it affordably? For now and the foreseeable short-term future, costs are going to remain high for a whole host of reasons. Probably the biggest one, There are so many billions of dollars being poured in. Everybody who's pouring them in wants that money back, so they don't want anybody to start to relax pricing. So I think we're going to have 5-6 years of extended pricing. The good news is, through open source and things universities do really well, you can dramatically lower the price. I believe that everybody should get the benefit for AI. You have to democratize access. Democratizing access means lowering price. Not all communities can afford it. We've got to get that down to zero so that all the communities can afford it. And I think the last one is probably the most important. For the IT professionals, we've been trained from birth to get requirements and deliver on the requirements. So that's this two-way interaction. You give me requirements, I give you solution. It is absolutely the wrong metaphor, both yesterday and even more so for AI. It needs to be a metaphor of co-creation, where all of us are in the room and creating the solutions that we need. And with that, I'm going to end. Hopefully I gave you something to think about for the breakout sessions, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Dr. Kellen, for your insights into the world's newest adventure, artificial intelligence. At this time, please join me in thanking all of our Ed Talk speakers for such thought-provoking content. It's now time to transition into our breakout sessions, and these sessions are designed to foster deeper topic-specific discussions and help identify new opportunities for us here at Tarleton. Your breakout session selection is noted on your name badge, and session locations are on the video screens out back. We also have folks that will direct you to where you need to go. Participants in the intercollegiate athletics and lifelong learning sessions will remain here in the ballrooms, and the other two sessions will be out here to your left. So at this time, please begin making your way to your breakout session. We'll come back here in a little less than an hour for our moderated panel. Thank you.
Before we get started with our last segment, our final segment of the summit, I want to thank our breakout session facilitators. Would all of our facilitators stand up, allow us to say, yeah, great job. And also another shout out, I know he's been introduced, but he's been behind the scenes doing a lot. And when we hired Campus Works 5.5 years ago, we were their first, they had worked in large state systems. They had not at that point worked with a 4-year public university. Is that correct, Dave? We were the first single 4-year public university. You'd worked with universities, but in a system and a collaborative setting. They have been absolutely sensational. Dr. Kevin David, would you stand up and allow us to say thank you for being an incredible partner? Sometimes when you pay these firms a lot of money, you never know what you're getting. We certainly got our money's worth, and I can't thank Kevin enough. So, all right, here we go. We know we're running up against, Lindsay has a 12:05 Uber. She has to make her flight. Anyone knows her president, Michael Crow? He has her very busy tonight. No days off at Arizona State University. That's why I love Dr. Crow. And I've already sent him a text and a picture of you thanking him for allowing us to borrow you for a few hours. And he said, make sure she comes home, Hurley. I know how you operate. So let's go. We're going to roll rapid fire style. So our first question here, and this is going to be tough for our panelists. And as we ask these questions, I want each of you to put yourself in their shoes. Think about it from their lens. Across healthcare, workforce development, AI, and athletics, what one word, only one word, common challenge do you see universities needing to address most urgently over the next 5 years? So you have one word. What is our biggest challenge? And I want you to think about that as well as you sit there. Think about how difficult it is to sum up everything we've heard in one word. I'll start to my right.
Sustainability.
Scarcity.
History.
Facilities.
Awesome.
Infrastructure.
That's two. Pick one.
I can't count very well.
I love it. All right, Oliver, I'm going to come back to you. If Tarleton State were to do only one thing exceptionally well in intercollegiate athletics to prepare for the next 5 years, what should it be and why? And I think we've heard it a few times from you today.
Sure. I think it should be pride of place campus. It's a physical manifestation of the aspirations the university has. And those aspirations are bold, as they should be in the state of Texas. And I would say facilities in terms of pride of place, the campus.
Agree. Well said. And I think we're doing that, not just on the athletic side, but if you think about Tarleton State University, and this is a shameless plug for the Texas A&M system, our chancellor, Chancellor Hager, our Board of Regents, and the legislators too. We have about $1 billion in infrastructure enhancement that's happened either at the construction just completed, for example, $132 million EECU, going into the next phase of construction that's under design on our campus. That's about $1 billion that's taken place just in the last 3 years. So we're incredibly blessed and thankful for the investment. But you're right, keeping up with those facility needs, but also taking pride in place, it's incredibly important. And so I'm switching gears to healthcare.
Okay.
Dr. Nedrolo, where do partnerships, because I know Cook Children Network is incredibly dependent, as we are dependent upon a partnership, a network of partners. With healthcare systems matter more than institutional capacity alone. So where do partnerships, in particular in healthcare systems, matter more than institutional capacity alone?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. We have an extensive network, and a lot of it's about kind of the daily, weekly, yearly getting the patient seen, and that's capacity within the institution. But the old adage, don't work harder, work smarter, I think a real opportunity for partnership that isn't just about bricks and mortars or capacity will be kind of these multidisciplinary teams that I think in the future will be needed to bring this kind of predictive diagnostic acumen and preventive acumen to the patient. And it will require, for a place like Cook, who doesn't have a singular relationship with the university, if you look at other big freestanding children's hospital systems, there's often some university that grew up alongside that system. And in fact, often the doctors and the medical staff at large are faculty at that university, and then they come to the medical center. And that's not Cook's model. Cook has forever and a day didn't grow up with a singular university relationship, and we need university partners to bring analytics acumen, kind of data analysis acumen that we shouldn't build in our walls. We should look to higher education and university partners to bring the next generation of clinical medicine to the bedside.
Well, and for those that don't know, I think most of the folks here know, Tarleton State, we've made a significant, in fact, our most significant investment over the last 5 years during this strategic plan has been in the healthcare. We've done a lot of things really, really well at Tarleton State. And we saw, back in 2020, this was the next evolution for our institution. And as we've invested and started programs such as the Physician's Assistant Studies program, the Doctorate of Physical Therapy, Doctorate of Occupational Therapy, Advanced Nursing, CRNA, all the things that Dr. Palmerosi and her team are working to develop, we couldn't do the things that we do without the preceptors that you provide, the clinicians, the future residencies for our proposed College of Osteopathic Medicine. So our partnership is, yes, you depend on us to provide the nurses,
right,
to provide the practitioners, but we can't provide the practitioners without you. You have to first train them.
Right.
So it truly is an all-in model. And I just want to say, as a dad, not as a president, our daughter Brooklyn, as you know, has visited Cook Children's. The exceptional care, the bedside manner that you and your team provide is exceptional. So, on behalf of all the moms and dads out there, and also Tarleton State University, thank you for the great work that you guys are doing, not only in the city but across the state. So,
thank you, sir.
It means a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Lindsay, so when you started speaking and you started talking about the Marabella community, I'm not going to call anyone out. I saw a lot of pens hit the paper, and Oliver leaned over and said, man, that is a great concept. Mayor Parker leaned over, she said, you so should do this. And I said, yes, we're going to do this at some point. And then Dr. Baker's like, she's writing down, okay, now we have to build a senior citizen community center on campus. I think it'd be awesome. And it was really, I know about the project because of Dr. Crow, et cetera, but so Mayor Parker leaned over and she said, yeah, that would be awesome. You can build it, and then eventually, Kendall and we'll all be there. And I leaned over to her and I said, yeah, if we stay in these two positions, we'll be there a heck of a lot faster than we think we will be. So what does it mean to truly design a university for lifelong learners rather than just, and I thought you did just an incredible job of getting us, and I saw no one smiled more broadly than George Malik in the crowd today, because he's been teaching us and training us, we've got to get out of this traditional age mindset. So the question is, what does it mean to truly design a university for lifelong learners rather than just the traditional age student? You did that, but sum it up for us again.
Yeah, well, what I would point to is rethinking this financial model where you pay a tuition fee and it unlocks this package of experiences and learning offerings, and instead thinking about how you can unbundle what the university offers. because the reality is learners at different stages of life aren't going to want the whole package. They're going to want pieces of that package. And universities offer so much more than just the courses. Universities and campuses are these third spaces where people run into each other. They encounter new ideas and they expand their social network. It's an intellectual playground. And so thinking about how do we unbundle it and then become entrepreneurs. University as entrepreneur means realizing what we have and leveraging that to carve pathways for new kinds of learners.
And so at Arizona State University, you all have been the not only the national but global leaders in kind of thinking 22nd century.
Yeah.
If anyone knows Mike Crow, he's already like
Way ahead.
24th century, way ahead. So as an institution like Tarleton State, who ironically 20 years ago wasn't that different than Arizona State.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So for all of us that love the institution, care about the values, we care about the DNA of the institution, we're going to protect those things. What would you leave us with over the next 5 to 10 years, knowing that AI, all the things that you are working with, what's going to be the biggest opportunity for us at this institution?
Mm-hmm. Yes, AI is happening, but I would say
it's real.
It's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
It's the genie's out of the bottle. But the most predictable macro trend that we know of is the demographic shift. I mean, we have the math, we have the data. It's very clear how this is going to play out. And so, using that to your advantage, looking at your community composition and seeing those folks as a resource, I think is critical. But I also want to encourage folks who are in this moment of upheaval, however this is affecting your world. At least at ASU, I think all of us are so inspired by our charter, our commitment to access, creating access for those first-generation students, for underrepresented students, that the chaos, this is, it's scarier to not try. It's scarier to not experiment and to just push forward. So I share your mission-centered institutional commitment, and we just keep grinding on.
Have to do more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said. So last year, Dr. Kellen, Dr. Baker, my chief of staff, who is, I've already shared, she's the best chief of staff in the country. She came into my office, she had her laptop, which she brings to every meeting, and she said, I'm using this tool called AI chat, what we call it, GPT. And she said, I think you're really going to like this. And she started going through this stuff, and I said, stop, Cretus, I'm not using this. I have you. You're my chat GPT. So why should I have to? And I used to say I don't use AI, and I don't deliberately, but now no one can say that, because when you simply do a Google search, even if you don't select the AI mode, I noticed, it gives you an AI overview. And it's incredible, like we're all using it, whether we deliberately choose to or not. And so my question to you, and in particular, I love that our students are here to hear this. What skills or capacities will matter the most for our graduates entering an AI-driven, highly dynamic workforce?
I think 3 skills. The first one I mentioned earlier, the fundamentals, whether it be chemistry, biology, physics, law, whatever, but a good base of fundamentals. The second critical skill is inquiry and curiosity. That's a skill. It's not just an orientation, so we have to cultivate that deeply. And the third one, absolutely critical thinking and metacognition. How is it that I think about what I think? How do I critically evaluate? I think those are by far and away the top 3 skills.
So Dr. Carl Aho's back there smiling, because what you just described is exactly what we want to be. Is we don't want to abandon the Renaissance approach to learning, that all of it matters.
Yes. Yes.
So to all of us, in particular university, I think we were the first in the system to charter the first master's degree in AI machine learning. I think that's right. Where do we go from a credentialing? Now, this is a very unfair question because AI is still creating itself, but as an institution that's growing, we want to be on the forefront of academic innovation, and I think we've done that. I think we have, we've started more master's and doctoral programs than anyone else in the state over the last 5 years. But from an academic programmatic standpoint, what's next for us? What should we be thinking about?
Yeah, I think there's immediate steps right away. I don't know if you have large lectures. Do you have large lectures?
Yes.
Get rid of them. There's actually
The
research.
CFO saying no.
No, hang on. This is where the rub is, because there's actually research to show they are toxic to education, right? And so now the question is, you have technology like AI that can intersect with the facilities and the fundamental funding model.
Right.
So if we can use AI to reform the large lecture, the fact that, what am I going to do? Well, you're not going to stand up on stage and look great all the time. Now what you're going to do is motivate, interact, get them to be more curious, do the things that humans do really well. So I think the very first thing one can do on pedagogical reform is to say, where can we very intelligently use this AI to really enhance the learning and reform parts of our curriculum that are known to be a little bit problematic? And large lecture is one of them. It's a response to scale. We've been pressured on dollars for that, but now we have a tool that can respond to that scale called AI.
So, Dr. Nedrolo, as we think about, and you shared some of this in your presentation, I thought it was really cool. At an institution like Tarleton State, we cover 230 of 254 counties, very rural, as you know, our mission, very rural counties, small populations, telemedicine, as you alluded to, critically important. Do you see AI replacing the telemedicine, the traditional, as we're training our nurses and our docs now, you went through that same traditional educational pathway. What happens to us as we start training the next PAs, OTs, PTs, DOs?
Right. So I think forever and a day, the idea, if you grew up in a rural setting, you are way more likely to return to a rural setting after you've finished your training. So that was one of the ways to solve for scarcity.
Yeah.
In the rural
Right.
healthcare setting. I don't know how well it works. I think it works okay. I'm an example of failure. I grew up in rural Minnesota.
Wait, that's my line, so you'll have to use another one. I use that a lot.
But I live in Fort Worth. But anyway, I think there's a real opportunity. Yes, the pandemic turbocharged telehealth.
Right.
And it's here to stay. It's real. Patients are satisfied by rural health, by telehealth in a rural setting.
Right.
But how do you maintain a human connection when it's two-dimensional?
Right.
So maybe the top of the license, the most expensive part of the healthcare delivery system still stays in a telemedicine venue or setting, but it's augmented by other more human interaction in the rural setting that speaks to the rural identity.
And it goes back to your word trust.
Right.
We as humans trust one another.
That's right.
And we trust that you're going to provide the care that Brooklyn needs, in my case, in your institution, or we need from other docs.
Yeah, because even there was a lot of lessons during the pandemic about really a heterogeneous and very different distribution of outcome. And a lot of the poor outcomes happen in the rural setting. And that has to do with how information was consumed. It has to do with access to care. There's a real big opportunity to make sure a big part of our population, your mission, who live in a rural setting, don't have outcome disparity between where they live, where they choose to live, and folks that choose to live in big cities.
Right.
There already is some disparity there.
Absolutely.
And how to close that gap is an important mission.
Thinking about the community, because I go back to Mirabel, I'm thinking about how in Stephenville we're going to build this. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. But how are your seniors adapting to the AI world? Because they came hoping that they would get a traditional, as President Crow they wanted to be in classrooms with the 18 to 22-year-olds again. Well, now that's shifted a bit. So how are you integrating with your folks?
Yeah, I mean, there is some coaching in there that they think they're going to sit in the back of a lecture hall and they're going to blend in and nobody was going to talk to them.
Right.
But after kind of getting their feet wet, they realize, well, actually, I think the experience that I'm looking for is conversations with other students. And I can't get that from a lecture, so I actually want a project-based class.
Got it.
I want one of these small, so with a little bit of exposure, I think they see the value
Right.
in these other pedagogies with,
Yeah.
that we've 30,
Delivery
40
models, yeah,
years
absolutely.
of research about how they can work. There was a little bit of resistance when they took Spanish 101 to the flipped classroom, but I can show them, look at the research on flipped classrooms.
Right.
It's very, very promising. This is the way to learn. And so I think there is a coaching conversation about the way that they remember learning and the way that we learn now. And what's exciting is they're a part of that experience. It's not, well, sorry, I can't deliver what you had in mind. It's like, come explore with us. Come see the way that students are learning now. Learn why that is a promising and positive approach to learning. And that conversation they're open to.
Yeah, and we're having the same conversations as we build new facilities, the flipped classrooms. We just had a regent on campus, Regent Randy Brooks, and we were taking him through our new health science, health professions building. And research is showing that the virtual cadaver labs are replacing the old traditional cadaver labs. People like yourself and Dr. Pomerosi and others, and including myself, really struggle with that notion, but it is true. Those institutions that are getting away from the old modalities and models are actually performing better because of AI and these new models. This is an unfair question, but how is AI going, it's already impacting athletics, but where do you see AI taking the intercollegiate athletic realm?
So what I want to see is an AI coach calling the plays in the press box. Mm-hmm. So if you think about football as a fairly complex game,
Those aren't called donors and boosters? Thought they already exist. From my perspective, they do.
So what a coach does is prepare for a game, and he looks at the tendencies of the other team and his own team's capabilities, and then when the game actually begins, who might get injured, who might be hurt. So all these different factors. The human brain probably can't process all that information fast enough or well enough, and AI can. And there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have an AI coach, call him coach, I don't know what, and up in the press box, call in plays. Now, what's been fascinating, the governing bodies historically, including the NCAA, have been very anti-technology. Technology in the NFL, et cetera, is banned from the field of competition.
Even have iPads and
yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see how our sports governing bodies respond to AI, but it's inevitable, and I think the AI coaches would do a better job than most offensive or defensive.
It wasn't until this is a great cost savings. Dr. Powell, Steve Urias, we don't have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for coaching staffs. This year alone, the quarterback in college was finally allowed to have a headset and listen to the coach. I too wanted to chime in, but that didn't work out too well. Final question. As you think about the final question, I want to frame this for everyone. Just a reminder, Tarleton State University, the DNA of our institution, we were founded upon creating access, opportunity, and affordability for then, 126 years ago, students of Erath County. Now, we're certainly more than that today, but what we're not is we're not an institution that has abandoned who we are. Over half of our students every year are the first in their families to walk the stage. 40%, 39.5% of our students are Pell recipients, which means they come from family incomes of roughly $32,600 or less. I was one of those students. I was a Pell recipient first in. And the power of a Tarleton State degree forever changes their lives. And so for many, we often talk about on our campus, for many of our students, it's the safest environment they've ever lived in. It's the best food they've ever had access to. With our faculty and staff, it's the greatest mentoring that they've ever had and may ever have access to. Their friends will be their best friends throughout life. So it truly changes not only their lives, but the generations that come after them. So as we think about this final question, we have to be an institution of hope and optimism. So what gives you the most optimism about the future of Tarleton State University? I'll start on my right, Dr. Kelly.
Well, I'll speak from my AI standpoint. Those with less privileged backgrounds can make just as much, if not faster, progress with AI. It is a great leveler if they're given access. Powerful force for social mobility, and institutions like this have a good role to play in enabling that.
And social mobility is what it's all about, making their lives better after spending time at our university. I love that. Thank you. Dr. Nedrow.
Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for higher education. I think it's really the crown jewel of civilization in some ways. And, the Enlightenment's a fragile thing. And when people come together to seek truth and really solve for real problems, and you couple that with the mission of providing access to those that have less chance than others to have that access, it's a really powerful thing. It's very hopeful, and we need the entire cross-section of society to contribute to healthcare. Being selfish, looking at it from my vantage point, I want there to be an identity that reflects the identity of our society when it comes to something as important as delivering healthcare.
Love that. It's funny you say the crown jewel, because we say at Tarleton State University that we are the crown jewel of the Texas A&M system.
There you go.
And he didn't even know that.
I didn't know that.
Pre-rehearsed that. That's free, Corey. That's free. That's free. Lindsay?
Yes. I'm really sorry. So
It's your Uber driver. Tell him we're almost done. We're almost done. We're there.
I got into this business because I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras, and that is where I discovered the power of the multi-generational household to increase the resilience of families and communities. And I got back to Arizona and said, how did we design this out? This is our greatest asset. And so I guess I would say, if Tarleton State is willing to see learners at every stage of life, you have this opportunity to harness resilience at the individual learner level, at the community level.
Incredible. Thank you. Oliver, wrap us up. Optimism.
Well, I would say...
You didn't give us much in intercollegiate athletics.
I would say this. The state of, and this is maybe an old school sort of cultural value, the state of Texas is all about bold leadership. To riff Dr. Kellen on your picture, to go where others are afraid to go.
Right.
And I think that is infused throughout the entire culture in this state. Rural, urban, ex-urban, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Tap into that. Continue to tap into that, which you already have.
Yeah, thank you. Oliver and I, when you put the illustration of casting the net, we kind of whispered, that's what we should do. We should be casting wider nets. If you would, please, let's give the panel a big hand. What an incredible day. So we have a special gift for each of you. We got to get Lindsay on the road, but if you would, we have our SGA leadership. We want to bring, you guys bring those on up.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, just. In Texas, they don't charge as much as Arizona. The Uber drivers are out there waiting. So Dr. Baker will pick up the bill. So yeah, we're going to have our SGA leadership team to give each of you a little thank you.
Yes. Appreciate it.
I just want to wrap up by saying thank you so much to each of our panelists for adding tremendous value and incredible insights to our morning. I want to again thank the committee for an outstanding day. Thanks to each of you for being here. You deeply love this institution, whether it's our foundation board or our alumni board, that they're proud Tarleton State alumni, and it's our students that will soon be our future leaders, but also our future alum. And to each of you, our faculty and staff that are making a profound impact on these, I used to say young people, but now to Lindsay's point, we're educating all walks of life in terms of age, and so we're so thankful. So thank you for being here. May you forever bleed purple and enjoy what's left of your Purple Thursday. Roll Texans.
Thank you.